Are you late to gentle parenting and wondering if you really commit to this, will your children ever listen? My name's Jodie Thornton and I want to talk specifically about the things that can come up when you haven't been gentle parenting since they were tiny, that maybe you've only just become convinced that it is a part of what aligns to your values, or maybe you've only just come across gentle parenting resources now and you know that it's right for you, but you're just not sure how to get there given you haven't started from that place. So I just want to say that this is such a common challenge. I cannot tell you how often I see posts in gentle parenting groups where people say, my children are 4, my children are 7. Like, I just don't know if this is going to work because I haven't been doing it from now, and it's really hard. And I want to say that it is a lot harder to start when they're older in the beginning. And it really doesn't take long for it to get easier if you know how to do it really skillfully. But I just want to say that it's not going to stay as hard as it feels right now. And I also want you to know that it really is a different challenge than if you're starting when they're tiny, when they're 18 months old or 2 years old or somewhere, in that kind of young toddler range. Now, I guess the first question is it ever too late? And I say absolutely not. Whether your child is 4 or 14, and I mean this when I say at 44, you can start as soon as possible. As the earlier you start, so the younger your child is when you start gentle parenting, the quicker things will get easier. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that the younger our children are, the more neuroplasticity they have. Now, that being said, there's a lot of neuroplasticity in the really young ages. And then there's another period between the ages of about 13 to 25. So, you kind of get 2 really big neuroplasticity windows. But having said that, even us old people can totally have enough neuroplasticity to rewire how we think about things and how we experience things. We just need to take it with a little bit of a different approach. So that being the case, it is absolutely never too late. I have helped parents whose children are older than me to actually make shifts in their relationship. And that's for both helping their relationship to become more healthy and more close, but also to help the children, who are very grown adults, become more emotionally aware, more emotionally attuned to themselves, and have better communication skills with everybody in their life. And so it really doesn't, there really is no deadline. You are not too late. Like, it's going to be okay, I promise. The one thing I would say, though, is that the basic tenets of what you see in the general gentle parenting advice really kind of boil down to, if you are nice to them, you're not mean, you're not controlling, then they have a better chance of listening. And if they don't, that's okay. And I kind of don't agree with that. I think that leaves a lot of teamwork off the table that we have access to. And so I think what's missing from that general perspective of, like, we just do things nicely. So we're really connected, we meet all their needs, we ask nicely, we don't use really harsh, like, guilt or shame or consequences or any of those things. We don't use any of that. And then they'll either listen or they won't. And what we actually want to do to become really skillful gentle parents is, when we ask them to listen and they don't, we want to get to the root cause of why they're not listening and solve that in a way that works for both the child and for you. And so if we go through some of the most common reservations or difficulties that parents have when they're coming to this gentle parenting thing a little bit later. The very first one is, can this really work without consequences? Like, if there's no time out, there's no, toys being withheld, there's no, you're not included in things. Like, if there's really no consequences to not listening, can it really work? The answer is yes, but it takes a shift in mindset. And so what I was just explaining is that instead of what we find with traditional parenting is, I'll give you a reason to listen to me, right? There's a consequence if you don't listen to me. Very power over. You look at most of the modern gentle parenting is, hey, I'd really like you to listen. And there are actually some quite toxic gentle parenting strategies out there. I really want to acknowledge that. Some of the gentle parenting strategies actually are coercion, right? And sometimes it really is guilt and shame, but it's done in a very loving sounding way. And so we want to notice that those things are also toxic. Those things are also going to set your child up to really be looking for external validation, and like they'll either become rebellious and not care, or they will start to become people pleasers. They'll start to look for who can tell me that I'm good enough, who can tell me that I'm worthy, and I need to do whatever they say I need to do in order to feel good about myself. And if we take away not just the old school parenting strategies, we take away any of that kind of guilt and shame, even if it's delivered nicely, and we really get into, I'm going to ask you to do something. If you don't, why? Like, what is underneath of this? And that takes a little bit of skill to be able to unpack what is the real root cause of your child not listening. Once you know how to do that, what we end up with is a child that's willingly cooperating, right? Willingly, and for the right reasons. And so you don't need consequences in order to get them there, because they actually want to listen, because they're getting there for the right reasons. Now, that might sound a little Pollyanna-ish, but I promise you it's realistic. But it does take skillful approaches. It's not enough to just ask why once. It's not enough to have enough connection time, right? We're really looking to solve a problem moment to moment, and get our children into the space of like, we are on the same team. We're trying to solve this problem together. So that being the case, I just want to also add a little bit about consequences. Consequences, if they work, they only work because they get your child to stop paying attention to what they want in life, right? They say, don't pay attention to what you want, do what I say or else, right? So if consequences are going to work, it requires your child to let go of what's important to them. Now, we don't want any kids to be letting go of what's important to them, but particularly with strong-willed kids, you're going to find that they're probably just not going to, right? They're probably just going to become more staunch in themselves, and they're just not going to care about the consequences, or they're going to get very good at not getting caught, right? You can't get consequences if you don't get caught. So that's why we're going to just let go of the idea of that we need consequences. Now, the second point we want to look at is rewards, any kind of reward. So reward charts, incentivizing, that kind of thing. In this case, it's actually the very same thing as negative consequences, just in the positive frame. So what it's saying is, you let go of what's important to you, and if you do, I'll give you this thing that you really want. Now, again, we don't want that for our kids, because we don't want them chasing after the ends justifies the means kind of paths in life. We don't want them to be chasing things that are not that healthy for them and sacrificing what's important for them to get there. That's not what we want. So we're going to let go of rewards as well. And I'll add in there that it also works for when you're trying to tell them why they should want what you want them to do, right? You should want to clean your teeth because otherwise your teeth are going to hurt. Small children and even teenagers are not going to be able to comprehend long-term consequences of their actions. So instead, I'm making the decision that you need to clean your teeth twice a day because it's important to me that we look after your teeth, right? That is a place where you're speaking from a place of honesty. And it's the same for every other time where you're trying to get your child to listen. We're looking for what's the real reason. We're not trying to convince them that they should want it. We're saying this is what is important. What do we need to take into account from your side to make this okay? Right? That's where we're headed to. And so that's our first couple of things to look out for when you're making that shift a little bit later in life than those early toddler stages. So the next thing is to recognize that we only want to be asking once. We want to ask our kids to do something one time, and if they don't do it, you're not going to hope that they decide to do it in a minute. You're not going to remind them. You're not going to nag them. You're not going to, be frustrated that they haven't done it. Your very next job is to find out why. So if you ask them, hey, can you put your shoes on? And then they say no, or they say yes, but they don't get up. Your job is not to say, it's time to put your shoes on right now. Your job is to say, hey, I asked you to put your shoes on. How come you're not putting them on? Right? And in that case, my tone, reasonably curious, wasn't particularly warm. Your tone doesn't need to be like perfect, but it does need to get across that you really want to know the answer to the question. You're not trying to judge them. You're not trying to dress up a statement as a question. You really want to know from their perspective, why are they not getting their shoes on? Because ultimately, this is where we want to get to, is that your child, not just with you, but with everybody else, when someone asks them to do something, either they do it for the right reasons, or they say, hey, I don't want to do that, and here's why. Let's solve this problem together. Now, in some cases, particularly as they get older, we might want them to say, I don't want to do that, and that's a boundary of mine, and it's not my job to help you solve the problem. But in the beginning, we really want to get into this place where it's a team-based problem-solving approach, right? So that's where we're ultimately getting to. So we're not getting to that they should acquiesce. We're not getting to we take it or leave it, whether they listen or they don't. What we're getting to is a problem-solving approach. Now, I want to give one example, which is my favorite example of this, and because I think a lot of people will say, my child is too strong-willed for that, my child wants their way too much, or my child is too young to actually participate in discussing it. I want to give an example. My daughter was 2.5 when this happened. She was tiny. And I had been using these strategies for a while, not a really long time, but for a while. And one day, it's a long story, but I just really needed to do the dishes. And she was banging something on the coffee table. And I can't remember what she was banging, but it wasn't precious. And the coffee table was so bad it needed to go to the tip. It was really old. So it wasn't an issue of things getting ruined. It was just an issue of noise. I needed to do the dishes, and I needed to be in that room because that's where the kitchen is. And I needed her to be quiet. And so I said, hey, Alyssa, can you stop banging? It's hurting my ears. Not a perfect script to follow, but it was good enough. And this 2.5-year-old child says to me, no, Mummy, I like to bang. You get headphones. Some people would say that's a bit rude for her to tell you what to do, but I'm like, no, she was looking for an option that worked for both of us, and she did a better job than me, right? Because she wanted to bang, and I didn't need quiet, I needed peace, right? I needed no banging. I was happy to put headphones on and listen to music while I did the dishes. And so I just want to say that no matter how small your child is, no matter how old your child is, we will get them there when it's a team-based problem-solving approach. Now, this is probably pretty new because you are new into the gentle parenting world. And so I want to acknowledge that a lot of the approaches kind of say, if you just do X, Y, Z, it'll work. And often our children don't respond in the way the book says that they will, or the article says that they will. And also, there's also that piece where they go, well, if they don't listen, then you're the adult, you should be okay with that. In my next webinar, Getting Stronger Kids to Listen, I'm going to take you through the step-by-step of what to say it, how to respond to how they respond to you, all of this to really shift that dynamic into understanding what is the root cause of them not listening and how do we solve that in a team-based approach. So in that webinar, you'll get the step-by-step and really get to be a skillful leader of your child and a skillful leader of your family dynamic as well, that we are actually a team and we work together. It's not an arbitrary power struggle, and it's not everything is a fight, not everything needs endless negotiations, that we actually just work together as a team. You can get that webinar at jodithornton.com/listen. And if you have any questions at all, particularly because you're in this stage of kind of implementing, when quite frankly, a lot of the gentle parenting spaces are they have quite high expectations that parents will just get it in a lot of cases. And so if you have questions that maybe you're a bit too scared to ask in those parenting groups, please do send me a message. You can do that through my website at jodiethornton.com/contact. And in that form, you can just pop a little brain dump of like, I'm trying to do this, but I just feel like it's not working, and I'd really like your help to see it in a different way. I'm more than happy to give you some pointers to really help you to get to this place, because it's such an it's a much more lovely way to parent, but it's also easier. Like, it's absolutely easier when you do it in a skillful way. And so I just really would love to help if you're getting stuck anywhere. Thank you so much for watching, and you've got this. You can totally do it.